feels it's like weird for him to be preaching and you not being here. So he's going to preach a little, I'm going to preach a little. So you got to put up with both of us this morning. What's that?
Put up with us?
Yeah, put up with us. He doesn't like that phrase, put up with us. But thank you for all those comments. See, I can't see who you are, but I can see that whole list. And it's just very encouraging. It's very, very encouraging. So I'm going to start in Isaiah 45, verse 7. That's going to be the first thing I read. But first thing I want to tell you is this is not what I had planned this morning. Last night I set out, I have 3 pages sitting back there that I planned to talk to you about this morning. And when I'm in the shower, God kept bringing to mind Romans 8. And that's where we're going to end up. We're going to end up in Romans 8. And some of you know that's my very favorite chapter in the whole Bible is Romans 8. And he kept bringing me back to these verses in Romans 8. And so that's where we're going. And then while we're singing the first 2 songs, I thought, oh, wow, God, you had this plan from the beginning. Because we're going through this time right now that seems like darkness. It seems oppressive. It seems wrong. And what God wanted me to tell you today is that he needs us to come back to him. That's what he needs. Many of you have heard me say in Bible study, I believe that what happens is that when a nation is close to God, he has his hand. And you got to remember, God's got this big hand. I can't even imagine the enormity of God's hand. And he has that right over top of the nation. And when you read the story of Israel, you can see this so clear because in the story of Israel, God's hand is right over it, and the enemy can't even try to defeat Israel. They don't even have to show up for the battle. All they do is say, we're coming to fight, and these people start running from them. And that's because they were close to God, and they were doing what God wanted. And so God's hand of protection was right over them. Now, I read on Facebook and on the internet that a lot of people think God's causing this. And I don't buy into that. I don't buy into God's causing it. But I do buy into the fact that, and I think this has been happening for years, this isn't something new, that the further we walk away from God, the more that hand of protection lifts. And it lifts a little, and then it lifts a little bit more. And the more that hand of protection, the higher that hand of protection is, the more stuff that can get in. And if you want to blame God for it, that's okay. And that's why I turned to Isaiah 45:7 first, because I want you to know God doesn't mind if you blame him for it. Because he says, as Isaiah 45:7, I form the light and I create the darkness. I bring prosperity and create disaster. I, the Lord, do all things. So, yeah, God does all things. You want to blame God for it? Go right ahead. God says it's okay. You can blame me because I'm in control of everything. Now, is this happening because right now we're worse than we've ever been before? No, I don't believe that at all. Is this happening because it's getting close to the end? Maybe, but I wouldn't take this as that sign. But what I would take it is God is calling us. He's calling us back. He picks up that hand of protection, and in the middle of picking up that hand of protection, he expects us to come to him. And in Romans 8, which I have spent a lot of time in Romans 8 since February 1st. I read Romans 8 on about February 1st, and as I was reading it, I felt God calling me to memorize all of Romans 8, the whole chapter. So all of February, I was in Romans 8, memorizing it. And then in March, he's called me to write devotions associated with it. So all of March, I've been writing devotions to go with it. And like I said, so this morning, I'm in the shower, and he calls me back to these verses in Romans 8. Oh, let's see. Starting in verse 15. I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. Have you thought about that? What you're suffering now can't be compared with the glory that we will have. For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. For creation was subjected to frustration, and not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in the hope that creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into freedom and the glory of the children of God. We know that the whole of creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth right up to the present time. And not only that, but we ourselves who have the first fruits of adoption to sonship, the redemption of our bodies, for in this hope we were saved. But hope that is seen is no hope at all. Who hopes for what they already have? But if we hope for what we do not have, we wait for it patiently. In the same way, the Spirit helps us in our weakness. We do not know what we ought to pray for, but the Spirit, he who himself intercedes for us through wordless groans. And he who searches our hearts knows the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for God's people in accordance with the will of God. And when I was writing the devotions this week, those were the verses I was focusing on. And I wondered, when was the last time I groaned? When was the last time I was so deep in prayer that I groaned? And I wonder if it's like that for you. And God called me to that this morning, and he asked me to ask you, when was the last time that you were so deep in prayer that you had no words? You knew you wanted to pray, but you didn't have any idea what it was you were praying for or about. When was the last time you just were so focused on prayer, so focused on talking to God, that everything else was out of your mind, that everything else was like it wasn't even there? When was the last time that the only thing that mattered was God hearing your cries? Because if we want the Spirit to intercede for us, we need to be groaning sometimes. We need to be in that place of prayer where we aren't saying any words. There are no words, because in our weakness, we don't know how to pray. So God sends his Spirit, and his Spirit comes in, and his Spirit just goes into our heart and takes everything out of it and takes it right up and sits it at Jesus' feet and says, this is what your child needs. This is your child's heart's desire. But when was the last time we did that? I don't groan very often in prayer. Seldom do I truly groan. I pray all the time. I got in first or second First Thessalonians, it says pray continuously. I got that. Got it. But groaning, when was the last time I groaned in prayer? And when we do, I believe that there's a promise in Jeremiah 32:42 that is for us when we start this groaning in prayer. In Jeremiah 32:42, this is what the Lord says. As I have brought all this great calamity on this people, so I will give them all the prosperity I have promised them. God promised prosperity. In Jeremiah 29:11, he promised a future, a hope. He promised us. So just like this great calamity has come upon us, he will give us prosperity. But if we want that to happen, we need to be groaning. Are you groaning? And I want to leave you with this promise that I know you've heard. You probably haven't heard Jeremiah 32:42 before. When I told Steve I was using Jeremiah 32:42, he went, oh yeah, like sarcasm, because like nobody's ever heard of Jeremiah 32:42. Nobody repeats that verse. But this one in 2 Chronicles 7, verse 14, this one you will have heard. Because this one says, if my people who are called by my name. Are you called by his name? If you're called Christian, you are called by the name of Christ. That's what Christian means. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways. See, we stop at pray. We stop at if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray. We stop there. I pray. Okay, I pray, but do I seek God's face? Do I turn from my wicked ways? Because then when we do that, then God says, I will heal, I will hear from heaven, and I will heal their land. That's the promise. And I want the promise. And I want the promise for you, not just for me.